Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and today is part 2 of my new series where I talk about what gear is my gear. Gear that I have chosen to keep around either for my own listening enjoyment or to use as reviewing reference pieces. And honestly, very often those two things are one and the same. Today, as promised, we are going to look at the Vioelectric HPA-V281 Headphone Amplifier. All right, so I have had this in my collection now for at least 2 years. I bought it used on a good deal from a friend at the time about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more than 2 years ago. And it really has been kind of my workhorse, both personal listening enjoyment amplifier and reviewing reference amplifier, basically for the life of this channel. So I will give some thoughts on the sound of this thing and answer the question, why do I use it as my own personal reference amplifier in this video? So we'll do shameless self-promotion and then we'll come back and get into those questions. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show. The V281 was launched back in, I think, either late 2014 or sometime during the year 2015. And its starting price was about €1,600 for the very basic model, which at the time in 2015 translated to about $1,750 and change. If you were to translate that to late 2022 money, and it's April 2023 when I filmed this. Okay, but anyway, in terms of late 2022, excuse me, US dollars, that would have been about $2,100, getting close to $2,200 for a starting price. Finding the price of this thing and what it was back then is getting hard because it is a discontinued model. You really can only buy this used anymore. So this isn't really a review in terms of me saying, hey, I recommend this, go out and buy one, because that's going to be difficult to do. The intent of this review really is just to give you, my viewing audience, a little bit more context about the signal chains that I like to use and why, and that help you understand my reviews a little bit more here. So, as of 2019, the features that this particular unit has, and this one has the stepped attenuator, and I have a quick little video clip that I'll splice into this video here at some point where I turn this as it's powered on, and you can hear the sound that the stepped attenuator makes. Okay, but anyway, it's got the stepped attenuator and it came with a remote control. That option around the year 2019 was selling for about $2,500 USD brand new. That translates, again, because we've been through an inflationary period here. Late 2022, that would have been about $2,860, so getting close to $2,900. There for that for, again, this unit as configured. All right. Now, other than that, what is this unit? It is a fully balanced headphone amplifier that has a fair number of features on it. So, just real quick here on the front end, you see the 4-pin XLR balanced headphone output, which is this one right here, excuse me. We have twin 1/4-inch single-ended outputs, so a lot like Lake People's other amps. And again, Violectric is kind of the Buick to Lake People's Chevrolet, so to speak. Like, Lake People is the parent company, they own the Violectric brand, and it's just a little bit more upscale than their standard Lake People branded products. Okay, anyway, twin 1/4-inch outputs, which are safe to use simultaneously and all of that. We have big volume knob on the potentiometer here. We have a channel balance control, which actually has come in handy at times when I have had like stuffy head and cold and all of that. Sometimes that needs to wiggle just a little bit. When I'm fully healthy, it stays dead center though, right? And then look at all these buttons up here in your upper left, right there. We have XLR and RCA input selection. We have the digital audio input selection, and then we have two buttons to swap between the headphone output and the line output, which we'll get to in just a moment. Okay, it has a kind of interesting design of this, like, you know, fairly skinny front, but look how deep it is in the chassis there. Okay, and then here's the back panel where we see both XLR balanced input and output, RCA unbalanced input and output. You see dip switches for gain control, okay, and then you see the power plug input there. And then there is a space for these units. They did have the option of having a built-in DAC with a USB input, I believe, back in the day. This unit does not have the DAC in it. All right, those are the features from input and output. Basic build there, it is solidly built. The power output here, we do need to talk about because I have reviewed a lot of high-end headphones on this channel, and this has driven all of them, basically. In fact, any non-fringe kind of tech piece that has come in, I have used this to power. And what I mean by that is, like, this does not work with, say, the RAL HSA or SR1A, excuse me, the RAL SR1A, the ear speaker things. Like, those are too low impedance. This does not work with that. So, like, that's what I mean by kind of a fringe case. But any other non-electrostatic headphone that you have seen come in here spent some quality time on this amplifier, and that's kind of how I got to know it. So let's talk about the power output and its drivability here really quick so I can provide some context there. Now, this thing it's a little bit different in its power delivery, at least by specification, than most amps. At 32 ohm impedance, this thing is rated for a 2700 milliwatt per channel output. At 50 ohm impedance, it is rated at 4200 milliwatt per channel output from the balanced output. Typically, you don't see increase in power output as impedance goes up. It's just the amplifier is what it is, and as impedance goes up, power output goes down. This thing it maxes out its power output, at 100 ohms, delivering up to 5600 milliwatts, which is 5.6 watts per channel. And then still claims something like, I forget the number, oh, I have it on my screen over there still, 2700 milliwatts again at 600 ohm output. Okay, so I mean, you get high enough, and yes, the power output starts to decrease as impedance goes up. But for a while, the power output goes up, and then it goes down, okay, after that. So this thing does pack quite a bit of power. Now, since it is a mid-2010s design, there were not as many inefficient, hard-driving, planar magnetic headphones on the market at the time as there are now, right? Mid-2010s, I think we would have been looking at the Hi-Fi-Man HE6, probably was about the hardest driving planar on the market at that time, okay? Or at least in the running for that claim. It has been overtaken now, okay? And high impedance headphones were still kind of all of the rage thing. Like the Sennheiser HD800S would have been like one of the top dog headphones at the time and that sort of thing. So Vioelectric sat down and they designed an amp that would be optimized for those high impedance loads. And they definitely achieved that to my ear. Okay, but also still delivered a fair amount of power for some of those planars that were around at the time, like including the HE6. Because I have been told from many sources that I trust that the V281 was kind of like the amp that you needed to really hear what made the HE6 tick, okay, and why that was such a special headphone. All right, so the point that I'm making there is even though it is not necessarily the best or even the ideal amp for many an inefficient planar headphone, like the Hi-Fi-Man Susvara, like the Abyss AB1266, okay, you get the point there, right? Like some of those models, it still does a pretty decent job with them. Like, I feel like it still has given me a pretty good indication as to what those headphones are, at least communicates the essence of their natures and gives me a fairly good idea of what they either are or could be capable of. And so it has been a really valuable tool for reviewing, okay, because of that, because it handles high Z loads and because it does a reasonably okay job with most inefficient planars. Like, I still have Hi-Fi-Man Susvara around, and the Susvara is going to get one of these What Gear is My Gear videos here very soon. And I power it off the V281 here. And again, it's not the ideal pairing. It is not the best that the Susvara is ever going to sound, but it's pretty darn good. And the Susvara still separates itself away from pretty much every other non-E-stat headphone I've heard, okay, even on this amp, okay, compared to many other top-of-the-line models that I've had come through. So that was important just to kind of talk about drivability and the power and the fact that, yeah, I think we can trust the reviews, at least I really hope so, but I'm pretty confident that we can trust a lot of the takes I've had on a lot of high-end headphones using this amp. Okay, now, with that, let's talk about its sound profile here. And I'm not going to run through test gear so much because this has been used as the amp for just so many headphone reviews on this channel. I mean, basically all of them that are not E-stat or not the RAL SR1A, right? Okay, so the sound that you get here, I can sum up with just a few words here in that it is leaning warm, it is wide and somewhat big in stage. It has a smooth but still impressive detail retrieval and presentation profile. Okay, and it has some good, fun physicality, macrodynamic kind of presentation for it. So it's warm and smooth, but still detailed, but also it's got that fun, energetic kind of macrodynamic impact to it. Okay, so let's unpack all of those a little bit. So as far as the perceived frequency response presentation kind of thing goes, it is a neutral warm presentation. It does seem to have a nice, pleasing amount of fullness through the mid-bass to my ear that gives it that kind of warm, full, rich sound. It is not quite as warm or as thick as like that stereotypical tube sound, but it is trending in that direction, but still maintains a more neutral than not kind of presentation. So call it neutral warm. All right. Through the mids, one thing that I appreciate about it is that it is a little relaxed. You hear me complain on this channel a lot about mid-forwardness in headphones and shoutiness and honkiness and that sort of thing. This amp actually helps smooth out and relax some of the presentation through a lot of that upper mid, like kind of 2 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz kind of range, so that shout and honk does not come out as much on this amp as it does from some other competitors that I have heard. Okay, so it does, for my ears, match a lot of headphones pretty well in that it just kind of relaxes that range and reduces the amount of shoutiness and honkiness while still maintaining a nice, full, rich, believable timbre kind of mid-range presentation. All right. The treble is also generally well controlled and is just kind of that stereotypical, it will get sibilant when the recording gets sibilant, which sounds like a cliche, but we say it for a reason because there are many cases in which that is true, and it is true here. Now, the sound staging, I said, can be a bit big, okay, and all of that. Now, with some source gear, this can sound a little bit artificially wide. So pairing this with DACs, as with any piece, can be a little bit of a challenge and something you need to put some thought into. Because if you pair this with another warm, wide-sounding DAC, like say a Denafrips, like I have the Denafrips Pontus 2 in, and at least pre-FPGA firmware update to the 12th anniversary edition on that Pontus 2, it was a really warm, relaxed, wide kind of presentation. And that really doubles down here, and it can start to sound just like unofficial or artificially warm, thick, and then overly wide. So the spatial presentation on this can be really good and extremely holographic in all three dimensions, but it does need some help from the DAC sometimes to pull that off. So that is a good segue into pairings, where I think that this amp and the Vioelectric V200 series in general, because of their warmer, slightly thicker, kind of wide presentation, they can get a little bit loose in their imaging and their separation because of that soundstage size. You are better off pairing them with very neutral, incisive, and very precise spatial DACs. So my Berkeley Alpha Series 2, which I did, which was episode 1 of this What Gear is My Gear series, has a very incisive presentation and a very precise imaging and separation to its spatial presentation. And that really helps tighten up the spatial performance of the V281. And then also the relentlessly neutral presentation of the Berkeley, and then the slightly neutral, warm, thick presentation here really come together nicely and synergize nicely, I think, as a signal chain to, again, be very neutral and incisive and have a lot of resolution and detail retrieval, but still kind of be smooth it out and be not aggressive and be a mostly pleasing presentation, okay, that way. The other DAC that I have used for this that got very similar results to that is my Chord Hugo 2, using the single-ended input on this. A very similar kind of presentation there that gets most of the way to what the Alpha S2 and the V281 do together, but not quite all the way there. So that, knowing that and its synergistic behavior with DACs has helped me also do DAC reviews, because if the imaging and the separation, all of that becomes really nice and tight on this amplifier, I know that that is a lot of the DAC's doing. If it's a little bit loose, okay, and a little bit sloppy sometimes and a bit artificially wide, then that tells me that that DAC that I am reviewing there would likely be a better match to an amplifier that is a little bit more precise in its imaging and its spatial presentation in its own way. So something like the head amp house sound, or the SPL house sound, that is a little bit more neutral, bright, and a little bit like tighter in its own control of the spatial separation, imaging separation, that kind of thing. All right. Last, let's talk about the dynamics, because particularly in the low end, this thing has a very punchy, slammy, somewhat rounded, but very fun and physical low-end bass presentation that has a lot of hit, a lot of rumble, some pretty good bass extension, but still does a good job of maintaining good pitch definition and articulation and bass resolution at the same time. So a lot of low frequency texturing comes out and all of that, while still having the fun impact that I like. I'm also a fan of Hi-Fi Men headphones, right? And Hi-Fi Men's are not particularly slammy in the low end, and I like some good hit and thump in the low end. So, as I mentioned in my Berkeley Alpha Series 2 review, that one has a fun, engaging, lively, macrodynamic presentation to it. The HPA-V281 doubles down on that kind of presentation, and then that helps Hi-Fi Men's HE1000 SE, Sosvaro, which is hanging up over there, and all of that, and that's the HE1000 V2 Stealth Edition that just came in, and we'll get a review very soon. Okay, all of that, but like, it helps that Hi-Fi Men presentation have a little bit more impact to it, which I enjoy. Now, I do have to be somewhat careful when I use this amplifier with my Focal Utopia, the original, because that headphone is already very energetic, impactful, and all of that. So it can still be very fun with that, but the output of this thing and the Utopia are not necessarily the best match with each other, and it can be a little bit aggressive and a bit sharp sometimes in the mids. Some of you are going to grumble at this, but a cable swap to a what is it? A Nord Vigard, okay, Norn Vigard Utopia cable really helps smooth a lot of that out, and then that becomes really fun and detailed and controlled and has good timbre and all of that off of the V281 with that cable as well. So that was one way to get around that there, but I think through most combinations, the Utopia is probably not the best match to the Vio V200 series, although you can manipulate it a little bit with a cable. All right, anyway, I think I will leave it there for my thoughts on this one. So I hope I have answered the question, why do I like the HPA-V281 so much? Why do I use it so much? And it's just because it has earned my trust. It's still a very good amplifier. I think it gives me a pretty good impression of just about every headphone that I have thrown at it. That does not mean that it is the best synergistic match to every headphone that I have thrown at it. Just that it continues to impress me, even in comparison with others, like the Ferrum Ore, like the SPL Phonitor X, Powerman Formula S. Okay. The only amp that I've had in here that I thought was like, okay, truly better and an actual upgrade that wasn't just one of those questions of not necessarily better, just different, but that was genuinely better, would be the LTA Z10E, but that's a $7,000 piece. And hopefully I will get one of those back in so I can finish the review on that one, fingers crossed. But even then, if I had the funds to buy a Z10E, I still would not sell the V281. It would still have a place in my collection and a job to do because it has been such a valuable reference piece for me. All right, I'm Wave Theory. Thanks for watching this. I hope this helps you understand some of my reviews better and why I like the HPA-V281. Again, it is a discontinued unit, and I make this video for your benefit so you can understand my reviews better. However, some of these do go on sale on the used market every now and then for $1,500 or less. And if you can score one of these, particularly with the stepped attenuator and the remote control, for $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 or less money, it is a really, really good amp that can be in your collection for a very long time and do a good job for you if you like that kind of warmer, wider, smoother, but still macrodynamically fun and impactful kind of presentation. All right, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, check out my PayPal, check out my Patreon. Do all of those things you do to support YouTube channels, and as always, enjoy the music.